today is probably a perfect day for me to do a news of the week video because today is the day where the deadline of the short 2-day transfer window in MLS have officially concluded, and we definitely had some blockbuster deal that has happened today and also yesterday, and then there was actually a lot of blockbuster deal that I try my best in terms of fitting everything on the board. I think there was one blockbuster trade that unfortunately didn't make it on the board, but I'm just gonna quickly mention it, is the Dave Romney and Dax McCarty trade to Nashville, and that I was gonna put it on here, but since I did not have enough room, and since I kind of mentioned in the last news of the week video that it's pretty much confirmed that this deal was going to happen, it was just a matter when the transfer window is going to open in MLS that transaction is going to occur, which today it officially occurred. So that's why I'm not going to kind of talk about that again, and that for people that at the end of the video probably asking me why I didn't talk about that trade, well, I kind of mentioned it in this video, and I also mentioned it a lot in the previous news of the week. But the first news is actually nothing to do with some of these blockbuster trade that happened in these two short trade window day in MLS, but it's more about Zlatan Ibrahimovic announcing that he is officially leaving the Galaxy and most likely returning to Europe. And this is definitely not a big surprise because despite the fact that, the Galaxy tried their best in terms of convincing Zlatan to stay another year, it looked like that was not going to happen, consider there was just so many rumors from Europe that they want Zlatan to come back and kind of retire there. And, Zlatan, in classic Zlatan fashion, when he was just about to leave MLS, he basically sent out a thank you message, not only to the fans and also to the Galaxy, but he also kind of arrogantly said that he conquered, and now he's leaving. So unless if the definition of conquer means that you basically win 0 trophies, 0 individual award, and only won 1 playoff matchup, and that maybe people kind of use that as a way to say you conquered the league, yeah, I don't think he kind of conquered the league. But, I know people are going to make kind of mess up this and just kind of say that, yep, there goes Zlatan again, the most egoistic, if not the most egoistic player in the league and in the world, just saying a bunch of nonsense before he, of course, leaves MLS. And some people even say that, he basically kind of chickened out. But, this is just classic Zlatan. And either you love it or hate it, this is the way that he kind of want to portray himself. I mean, he's been doing it throughout his career, and it's no surprise that this is how he's going to leave the Galaxy and also leave MLS. Now, speaking of the Galaxy and stay with the Galaxy, they are reported that they are not going to trigger the option to buy for Fabio Alvarez, and that most likely he is going to be loaned back to Argentina. And this one is not a big surprise too, because I always thought that Fabio Alvarez was kind of a bit of a rental of the fact that, once Roman Alessandrini comes back, then, he of course will kind of take over that spot. Well, technically that did not happen. Still, I think from what I heard of the Galaxy, they need to, if they want to keep Fabio Alvarez, they have to pay a very steep price of this. And knowing the fact that Alvarez, he had some bright moments with the Galaxy this year, but, he also isn't a guy that you would say that deserved to have a very steep kind of price tag to be able to pay, and that's why the Galaxy smartly say no, and that they decide to look forward. Which also makes me wonder, last week I think I talked about one of the Boca player, which I think it was Mauro Zarate, and I talk about how, it's kind of a little bit ridiculous the fact that the Galaxy are thinking about signing another striker, even though they're pretty stacked at that department. Well, now with Zlatan Zlatan is now leaving, and that they're probably not going to have Alvarez when they don't trigger the option to buy, and that I also heard Roman Alessandrini could be leaving the Galaxy too because they're thinking about not renewing his contract. maybe that Mauro Zarate kind of signing might not be as crazy as seen, and that this attacking core kind of started to be a little bit hollower than what people would think. I mean, a lot of people always kind of complain, or at least I'm pretty sure Galaxy fans complain the fact that, oh, this team always signs too much striker. Well, you basically just lost your best striker this offseason, and you're going to lose another DP player in Roman Alessandrini, and that it's hard to believe, but the Galaxy, they're going to have 2 DP slot that is going to be open in the off season if Alessandrini will be the next one to be leaving for the Galaxy. So yeah, I won't be surprised if they're thinking about getting some big name attacking player again to restock the Arsenal, but at the same time, I just wonder for the Galaxy, yes, you want to restock your attacking Arsenal and you want to replace Zlatan, but at the same time, you probably need to think about your main focus and something that really's been your undoing for the past couple of seasons, which is the defense of this team. Now, the Chicago Fire have officially part way with Veljko Paunovic as their head coach, and this was just way overdue. I mean, there's been a lot of Fire fans that not only want their GM Nelson Rodriguez to be out, but a lot of people and a lot of Fire fans want Veljko Paunovic out of this team ever since probably last off season, and that since the Fire has now got a new ownership and that they are moving back to Soldier Field and kind of just hitting the reset button in terms of heading into this new season, you knew that Veljko Paunovic was probably going to be the next guy that is part of the old regime that will be fired from this team. And today it was confirmed that he is fired, and that the Fire, they're definitely heading into a new era, and that I'm pretty sure a lot of Fire fans are very excited about how this team is going to go, and that I think this is probably the most excited that Fire fans have gone heading into the offseason, and a lot of optimism with a lot of Fire fans, probably since the early days when they were considered one of the best franchise of MLS, and that a franchise that have won MLS Cup, and that in the last couple of years, the reason why they haven't got to that stature is because the ownership of this team has really just pretty much burned this team into the ground and have really just put them into rock bottom. Now, NYCFC themselves are already thinking about their replacement for Dome Turan, and despite the fact that they are gonna get one of the most well-known kind of legend in the game and a well-known kind of manager in Giovanni Van Bronckhorst as their new manager, there was also talks the fact that the only reason why he is going to NYCFC is that this is kind of an audition for his job in terms of potentially taking the realm of Man City and potentially replacing Pep Guardiola there as their manager. And if you're an NYCFC fans, as much as it's kind of disappointed the fact that your new manager, and this is also why I put kind of a quoted new manager there, because in case if he is able to do well with NYCFC and that Man City of course see that he does well and sees that he's ready to take the realm from Pep Guardiola, then that of course is the case, and that NYCFC will once again have to let go their head coach, and that he of course will go to Man City. And as much as that is kind of a very frustrating thing for NYCFC fans to deal with, this is what happened when you decided to be a partner or a parent team of one of the biggest football team in the world. I mean, anytime when you are a big football team like Manchester City, they obviously is going to, like, this is a good example of them trying to, if they want to get a new coach into their system, they can either hire a well-known name, or they'll hire a couple of guys that they think that they're well-known, but they're not ready yet to take over this managerial role. So they decided to send them to a couple of their affiliate club, and NYCFC is one of those affiliate and parent club of Man City. So yeah, unfortunately for NYCFC fans, that's kind of the reality of how it works to be owned by a a bigger football team in the world. But we shall see if he does become the new manager of this team, and whether or not if he can have that same success that Dominic Turan and even Patrick Vieira had when they were taking the helm of NYC FC. Now, let's actually get into the trades that has happened during the trade window, and that I've talked about how there was a couple of blockbuster move that has happened in this 2 short days of the MLS trade windows. And the first one that I'm going to be talking about is Darwin Quintero, who a couple of days ago has been rumored the fact that he was pretty much done with Minnesota, and that Minnesota actually did not decided to offer him a contract extension, and that it looked like for sure that Quintero was going to be leaving Minnesota, and that today it was made official that he was leaving Minnesota, and that he is going to be traded to the Dynamo in exchange for Marlo Hairston and $150,000 general allocation money and $150,000 target allocation money in both 2020 and 2021. So that equals roughly around $450,000 allocation money that Minnesota, of course, will get, and they also get a little bit of a depth in terms of their midfield and their fullback row in Marlo Hairston. Houston, of course, will also get a third-round draft pick from Minnesota as part of this trade. And overall, I think this is definitely a good trade for both teams. Obviously, the Dynamo is going to get a guy that I know he has had a turbulent year with Minnesota, but I still think Darwin Quintero, despite the fact that I have heard some people say that he's now on the wrong side of 30, he still have enough left in the tank to produce a couple of goals. And especially if the Dynamo are potentially going to lose some of their key impact player in Albert Velez and Mauro Manotas to Europe, Darwin Quintero could be a very good replacement in terms of that. And for Minnesota, obviously they get rid of a very, very steep kind of contract that they had to pay for Darwin Quintero, and that when you look at how as I said, with the way how turbulent that Darwin Quintero season has been with Minnesota, and that he of course got benched in the 2 most important game this season for Minnesota, you knew that he was not going to be there any longer, and that you'd be very surprised if he was going to come back for another year, especially his contract expired this year. And that there you go, that is exactly what happened. And that overall, like I said, I think it's a good trade for both of these teams. Now the other blockbuster trade that happened today is the Darlington Nagbe sweepstakes. So there's been rumors around that Darlington Nagbe was potentially going to be leaving Atlanta and going to join with former Portland Timber manager Caleb Porter, and was going to reunite with his old manager that they both were when they were with the Timbers a couple of years ago. And today it was official that this reunion is going to happen, and that Darlington Nagbe is going to reunite with Caleb Porter at Columbus in exchange for $750,000 target allocation money, $150,000 general allocation money in 2020, and $200,000 TAM in 2021. A total package of over $1 million of allocation money. Like, that is definitely a very steep price of allocation money that Columbus have just paid to Atlanta to get Darlington Nagbe. Although, having said that, Nagbe, he is considered one of the best midfield in the league, and obviously this is going to be a bit of a loss for Atlanta, knowing the fact that they won't have that present in the midfield anymore. But at least Atlanta is able to kind of almost get the refund in terms of when they first bought Darlington Nagbe from Portland, and that I remember when they bought him, it was also close to $1 million of allocation money, and that now they of course get that return, and hopefully they can use that return money of allocation to try to sign a player that is similar to Darlington Nagbe and could be a force in the midfield. And as for Columbus, this is definitely a good piece for them to kind of continue to rebuild. Like, this Columbus team, they have already done a very good job in terms of trying to rebuild this squad, and that this is why I think when I was doing the moving forward series of the Columbus Crew, I was very optimistic that the Crew was going to be back and that they're not going to be like the team from last season, which were a team that was spending near the bottom of the table, and that once they of course would get some key pieces back, and once they of course add some new pieces to try to strengthen up their midfield and their defense, and also add some balanced attack, this could be a team that could be a dark horse heading in the Eastern Conference. And yeah, if there's one guy that can of course get the best out of Darlington Nagbe, it would be Caleb Porter. So this move was a great move for Columbus, and it was also a great move for Atlanta, knowing the fact that they are going to get that allocation money back from when they pay Darlington Nagbe in the first place. Inter Miami have acquired Jay Chapman for TFC in exchange for $100,000 general allocation money. They also added Victor Ulloa from FC Cincinnati in exchange for $50,000 general allocation money and a couple of draft picks. So, Inter Miami, they're definitely wasting no time in terms of trying to get a couple of players that are kind of considered outcasts and guys that are kind of stuck on the bench with their previous respective team, and that hopefully they can use both of these guys in terms of depth pieces that they have. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that are still concerned with the way that Inter Miami, the way that they kind of construct the roster, it still looks kind of nowhere near to be complete. But this is the thing with most expansion team kind of roster where, they're not going to just complete the full roster before they actually enter the league. I mean, we're still kind of in an early stage where they still have the expansion draft to look at. They still also have the super draft, and they also have a full transfer window where I think once the European transfer window does open in January, that's when we are definitely going to hear the big names that Inter Miami is going to get, and that's when we're probably going to be even maybe hearing from either Cavani or Luis Suarez potentially linking to Inter Miami. Now, Inter Miami were not done in terms of the signing that they have done in the transfer window. They also did something that rarely happens, and that I know some people were kind of a little bit ticked off about this, but this is something that does happen, which is they acquire a homegrown rights from the San Jose Earthquakes, and that they got the homegrown rights of the Quakes goalkeeper Drake Calenta, and they got him in exchange for $100,000 general allocation money to the Quakes. Now, I know, like I said, I know people are kind of wondering how does this happen, and that is this even legal for teams to try to acquire homegrown right from another team? Absolutely, it is legal in terms of that, and it's kind of legal in the world football scheme, where you do see times where there are young players that tends to switch to different teams' academy, and that, in MLS, this is just another example of it. Only difference is in MLS, in order, if you want to get the homegrown rights from another team, you got to make sure that you have to give away either your draft pick or your allocation money, which in this case, it was allocation money and also draft picks that they are going to give up to the Quakes. Although the draft pick is not going to be very high. I think it was a third round draft pick in the super draft. So, Inter Miami didn't give up a lot in order to acquire this homegrown rights. Now, one of the reasons why the Quakes decided to not keep Drake Calenta and decided to sell his homegrown rights to Inter Miami is that they think that they already are very stacked in terms of the goalkeeping position. And, I think after this signings that they made a couple of days ago, where they decided to sign the second youngest player in MLS history and signed the youngest goalkeeper in MLS history in 14-year-old homegrown goalkeeper Emmanuel Ochoa. That's why they thought that their goalkeeper position is pretty stacked. I mean, they already have JT Marcinkowski as potentially the goalkeeper that is going to take over the role of goalkeeper for the Quakes in a couple of seasons, and that Emmanuel Ochoa, depending on if he, of course, can build up to his potential, he could also potentially replacing JT Marcinkowski in terms of that spot, and that they really don't need to have like a lot of depth in terms of that position. I mean, a goalkeeper position, you only need like maybe one or two goalkeeper that you have lined up in terms of your academy or in your roster, and I think the Quakes have like 4 or 5 kind of goalkeeper in their roster, and some of them, of course, are currently with Reno. So yeah, the Quakes are already very stacked in terms of that position, and if they feel like there is other goalkeeper that is good in their academy, they of course have to make the decision of choosing which one they're going to keep, and that in this case, they decided to keep Emmanuel Ochoa, and that Drake Calenda, even though he was a valuable option for the Quakes in terms of signing as a homegrown goalkeeper, they decided to kind of ship him off in order to get some draft picks and allocation money. Now, there is an unknown MLS club looking to try to get Chivas striker Alan Pulido. Now, when I first read the story, I thought that unknown MLS club was potentially going to be the San Jose Earthquakes. And it would make sense because, Almeida and that Chivas connection, and, Almeida has already think about trying to poach a couple of his former players to come and play with him at the San Jose Earthquakes, and Pulido is no exception to that, because when Almeida was at Chivas, he did a good job in terms of making Pulido to be a very good striker for Chivas. But here's the other thing. There are other clubs that is thinking about trying to pursue him, and that the Rapids, who I actually didn't know that this was a thing that happened a couple of months ago or a couple of years ago, but they were also thinking about trying to get him as their main striker. So, as much as I know, when you first read this and you think, okay, it must be the Quakes that is going to try to get this striker, not so fast. It might be other club that is trying to get him. And, if the Quakes does get Alan Pulido, I'm not quite sure, and I'm going to say I'm very happy with this move, and that this, of course, is the striker that we of course, are looking for, because I heard he hasn't really had a good season with Chivas ever since Almeida left, and that he hasn't really fulfilled his potential that he had when he came into the league. But, I think for the Quakes, if they can, of course, snatch him up, and knowing the fact that when Almeida, of course, was taking charge of Chivas, and he made Pulido a very good striker, and that if he can, of course, do the same thing, and if the Quakes, of course, decide to buy him, and Almeida could do the same thing with the Quakes and making him a good striker like he did with Chivas, then I'm perfectly fine with this buying. And it's going to be interesting to see how much it will cost for him, because I know Chivas is not going to really ask for a very, very cheap kind of price tag in terms of selling their main striker. Going back to Inter Miami, they, of course, are scheduled to face the Galaxy in their inaugural home match in March 15th. And I also have heard that the start of the season, which I said last week was, or not last week, but yesterday in the off-season calendar, that it was going to be somewhere near the middle or the end of February. Well, I actually heard one source that rumored the start of the season will actually happen on February 26th, which is actually not that kind of deep into, well, it's not that kind kind of shallow into February, and that it actually happened right near the end of February. And if you look at the calendar itself, it seemed like the start of the season is really the reason why it started in February is that, if they want to kick it off in March, they're going to have to wait until the 7th of March to kind of kick off. So they decided that, we might as well just kind of kick off in the previous week because, if we want to kick off the first game of the season in March, we have to wait till the 7th of March to try to decide to do that. So in other words, I know people are kind of excited that MLS is starting early this season. Technically, they didn't really start early, and that it was just kind of a schedule or the calendar that is saying that on that weekend, which they were hoping that it was going to be one of the first weekend of March that they want to start the first game of MLS, but since the first weekend of this season in MLS in terms of March doesn't happen until the 7th, that's why they think that they're just going to push a week earlier. And, did I say that it was the 26th? It was actually the 28th. So, technically, it's actually the last day of February, and you could even kind of say it's technically just... They might as well just make it saying that this is just kind of like early March that they, of course, start the season. So, I mean, in some way, I'm kind of disappointed the fact that when I heard they were going to start in February, do they mean that they're going to start in the middle of February and try to relieve the congestion that the schedule had this season? It turns out that probably will not be the case. And I also will be very interested to see how this season, in terms of, since we have two new teams heading into MLS, how does the schedule actually works? Because, last season with 2014, it kind of worked out where you get to play 2 times with each Western Conference opponent, and you play 1 time with an Eastern Conference opponent. Well, now with 2 more teams added to the league, then what do you do now? Do you still stick with playing a Western Conference opponent twice and playing an Eastern Conference opponent once? But you know that if you're going to do that, most likely there's going to be either 2 Eastern Conference opponent that a Western Conference team will not be facing, because there's going to be those 2 extra teams in the Eastern Conference. So it'll be very, very interested to see how the schedule maker is going to decide how this will work, or will MLS have more games this season, and that, as I said, with this CBA that is going to be expiring at the end of January, this is when we're going to really see how the league is gonna structure in terms of not only on the salary, but also how the schedule is gonna structure, and whether or not we're gonna actually have more than 34 games this season. And then finally, Austin set to build a new $45 million training facility. So it seemed like right now many of these new MLS teams is just so jealous when they hear a news of their fellow expansion team, or a team that have just expanded to MLS is building a training facility, that they decided that they're going to build their own training facility too. And in this case, Austin was so jealous that FC Cincinnati was going to build their new training facility, and that they were also jealous that Inter Miami was going to do the same, that they are also going to do the same and build a $45 million training facility. Now, I haven't heard anything about Nashville potentially building a training facility, but I won't be surprised if they're going to come a couple of weeks or even in the upcoming months where they're going to announce that they're going to also build a training facility, because they're also very jealous of the fact that some of these expansion teams around them are building these state-of-the-art training facility, that they also want to have one of their own too. So yeah, it's great to see that many of these MLS teams is building state-of-the-art training facility, and that I really urge the Quakes to eventually do this in the upcoming months, or even in the upcoming season, because let's face it, I think it's kind of a little bush league, the fact that, the Quakes, in terms of their training facility, is basically behind a parking lot and right around the railroad tracks. I mean, it just looked very, very ugly. And if you watch my match vlog and watch some of the time lapse, you see on the right where there's these kind of fences with some of the the banner of the Quakes, and also some of the legend of the past for the Quakes and some of the present player. Yeah, behind those kind of fences and banner, that's basically the training facility. It is very, very small. So I'm hope that they think about potentially building one soon and follow the footstep of what many teams right now in MLS have started to do, which is build these kind of training facilities so that they of course can get their players in terms of getting into match fitness and also making sure that they can recover as fast as they can. But either way, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of these news and what are other news that I might have missed on the sport. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.